Wednesday, 23rd of February 2022. And this evening's show, we are discussing the last gasp defeat against 10-man QPR at Loftus Road this evening. I'm John Aspinall, and this is Heartsight's podcast match reaction show. QPR 2, Blackpool 1.
Change the world. Small town from the north of England with a great tradition. Change the
I think that's all you can really say, isn't it? Apart from Mitch, you might be able to say anything because you're muted. Evening, everybody. Welcome back to Heartsight's podcast match reaction show. QPR 2, Blackpool 1, 10-man QPR. Tim, how the F have we lost this game? Welcome everyone in the comments, actually. We've just said in the green room. There doesn't appear to be anyone in the comments. We've got 24 live viewers, so drop us a comment, listeners, if you are. Viewers, rather, if you are there. But oh my god,
I think it's one of them, isn't it? I mean, I think we had so much possession that second half. I think they had just the two chances, didn't they? The one that Grimshaw saved extremely well, and then I give Thornley the kiss of death by praising his performance, and 1 minute later he concedes an OG. So I think I've been the official BFC Jonah in this case. But yeah, it deflates you, doesn't it, massively? Because I think overall performance-wise, particularly in the second half, I don't think we could have asked for much more in relation to possession, but probably the cutting edge was missing.
We have got some people in the comments. Wayne Flint just simply says FFS. Mitch, that sums it up perfectly, I think.
Well, I think we've got it sorted now. It's Tim's fault. We don't need to talk any more about it. We can go. The end.
Right. Said we wanted a quick pod this evening, and this is going to be it. Jez Evans a bit cutting there, and his comments on Facebook. Huff and Puff. Poor setup crab football at its worst this season. Jez isn't a happy man. Gary Ford says you should be used to it now, John. Yeah, we should, Gaz. Ray Gregson's gutted. And Douglas McLean says, saw one at the end. I think there's a joke in there.
Well, I think Jez has a point, and I think maybe Tim made, in a way, a similar point in a more, diplomatic way, because I think the takeaway for me is that, I don't know, in the chat, the patrons chat and stuff, there's always a bit of a debate about, we're not trying or we are. I didn't perceive that we didn't try in that game, and I agree with Tim. We got a lot of possession, but I think ultimately it came down to a lack of imagination in midfield. We couldn't unlock them. We didn't create that much, actually, for it playing against 10 men. We created absolutely nothing in the first 45 minutes. I don't remember us actually even having a shot on goal, let alone, you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even remember us having a sort of hopeful shot on goal. We created absolutely nothing other than a few moments where it looked like one of our fast players might possibly go past one of their defenders, but then they didn't. And then second half, we did create more, and yeah, they sat in, but we didn't really have an answer to that. That we had sort of some nice long diagonals from defenders at times. We had the odd little bit. I can remember one moment where Dougal played a ball in the first half to James, where I thought, "Ooh, that was clever," but nothing really made me go, "Ooh, that was clever," apart from Bowler's finish for the goal. And I think that sums up for me what that game was about. It demonstrated our flaws, and our flaws is we don't have a really imaginative midfield player. Or we do. We have Keshi, but he's injured, and we have Carey, but he's 19 and he's also injured. And apart from that, they're all football drone 1, football drone 2, football drone 3, and they're great, and I like them very much, but you need something more than football drone 1, 2, and 3 to unlock championship teams.
It doesn't help when you're setting up with 2 in the midfield either, and you're playing your possibly your best creative player in the midfield area on the bench, which will segue us on to the match day 11. Tim will just talk about this. Gives your opinions after I've read the team sheet. Grimshaw, Gabriel, Sterling, Casey, Thornley, James, Dougal, Connolly, Bowler, Hamilton, and Lavery. On the bench were Moore, Stewart, Robson, Kirk, Dale, Medine, and Yates. Now, I was doing my son's last minute speech that he's got to do at school. So I was researching the finer points of the solar system, planetary temperatures, etc. So I missed the start up, and I genuinely put on the WhatsApp group, what the hell formation is this?
Yeah, I mean, and we were having quite a bit of a debate in the chat, and I think before everybody agreed that I was right. And that was that it was almost like a little bit like it was meant to be like the Fulham formation, but probably without necessarily the personnel that we would ideally want to fill the individual spots. So depending on whether we're in possession or whether we were defending, we were either a 3-4-3 for me, or we were a 5-2-2-1. And I think the theory of it was right. It was a sort of like the Fulham formation, but as we're going to discuss the starting 11, I think there's arguably one or two weak links in that probably undid us and was the reason why we didn't have the performance in the first half that we really should have put in. And you know, like Mitch says, you struggle to remember us having a shot on target in that first half. So looking at the team, and well, obviously, you know, we are weaker than we would ideally like to be in those centre-back positions. And so we start with Sterling, Casey and Thornley. And which obviously it must be down to injuries. I mean, I wouldn't have thought he'd have rested Ekpateta completely tonight unless he's got a knock and it allowed him to play one game and then he's got to rest him at the moment. I can only think that's what it is. Good to see Jordan back. Not a fan of Reece James, but if you're going to play that system, it was probably his only option. And then you've got the two in the middle who, to be fair, have been doing quite well for us, and probably in this system should suit them, as I've said before. And then you've got Josh Hamilton and Lavery up front. I think there's a bit of a shout for Medine to start ahead of Lavery, but other than that, I didn't have a real issue with the formation. Other than I thought, you know, you're disappointed to see certain personnel either on the subs bench or not in the matchday squad at all.
Reece James, Mitch, was a controversial inclusion, but that brilliant retaliatory tackle in the first half was that raised him a slight a tad for me. Getting their lad sent off, I think that was the main talking point of the first half, aside from the goal itself from QPR, which was utterly soft yet again from a set piece. 3 players marking no one.
Oh, it was a horrible goal. It just was a horrible goal. It was so soft, and it was just, I don't know. I mean, what else can I say? You've already said it. They crossed it, they scored, and we didn't feel like we even tried to stop them. I don't know. I'm not into analysing things so closely so that we know exactly whose fault it was, but it was somebody's fault, and it was pretty flimsy and pathetic defending. But, and I know I'm just going to repeat myself, and I said this in the chat, I wasn't so bothered. Actually, in the first half, I wasn't as bothered by the fact we'd conceded a crap goal than the fact that we had created literally nothing. So when they scored, I just thought, well, I don't see how we can score now. They've won this game, because how can we possibly score when we don't appear to be able to get the ball anywhere near their goal? And then their fella did just wonderfully the most childish sort of, he looked like a 15-year-old getting sent off in a school game for feeling like he was being disrespected or something. You know, it was just completely childish and ridiculous. And that cheered me up no end, because then it was obvious that Critch was going to have to change things. Because we know what Critch is like. The danger is we concede that crap goal, we make absolutely nothing, and then he leaves it as it is for 70 minutes on the off chance that it all comes good. But you could see that he would now have to change it, because we're playing against 10 men and he's going to have to change it. And he did. And to be fair to him, I think he made the changes we all want. So the sending off was a bright spot, because it was a nice piece. It was a comedy sending off.
I think if you're going to get sent off for a headbutt, you want to go down all guns blazing, don't you? You want to actually, not that I'm condoning violence.
Well, I actually sort of respected. I respected
pathetic.
James for the fact that he didn't do the rolling around on the floor about it. You know, he sought to bring it to the ref's attention, as in, you know, you're going to let him get away with that, ref. But you know, I think there's plenty of opposition players who'd be rolling around on the floor, holding their hands to the face, and I'm sure we'll have seen a bit of that in the Champions League tonight, no doubt. And it was quite refreshing that he didn't do that. I didn't, you know, bar that, and I think he had one decent tackle. I thought James looked very uncomfortable at left back tonight. He looked. I forgot when Mitch came out with an analogy, and I can't remember what it was now in the chat.
Was it the 60-year-old running in a marathon?
Yeah.
And
I said, or it's me playing walking football on a Monday night.
Yeah, we might have been better with you at left back, Tim, but he just looks so knackered all the time. He looks like, say, he looks about 30 years older than he. I mean, I can talk with that, but he looks about 30 years older than he is when he's running. He's just got this really ungainly style, and I sometimes wonder if I'm harsh, if I think he's crappier than he is, just because he looks so ungainly, and actually he's playing quite well, and I'm just judging him on his aesthetics.
Just remember that little slipped ball. It was the highlight of the first half from an attacking sense.
The Dougal ball.
Yeah. Oh, was it Dougal?
The Dougal ball that he ran onto and then didn't know what to do. Yeah, it was a lovely ball from Kenny, and he just ran onto it and then did absolutely nothing with it and let it run out of play. Like he was think cross shot, I can cross or I can shoot, and then just got stuck. And therefore just froze and did literally neither, and the ball just rolled out of play.
I think the other issue we had in this formation, and it was obviously the front three were exactly the same way we played at Fulham, was that I don't think we high pressed as well as we could and should do. And it was a little bit like the Fulham performance before the unexpected interval, when obviously the Fulham fan unfortunately had a heart attack. But we were playing just a little bit like that, and where we were effective was when particularly when CJ and Bowler really pushed on, and Bowler looked the most ineffective I've ever seen him since probably November.
To be fair to him, their left back was very good. Abaggio, I think his name was. He was a very good defender, and he kept touch tight to Bowler. I think he did a good job on Bowler.
He may well have done. I just don't think. Well, yeah, and there was an argument in the chat, and in I think one that it was also the commentators mentioned it, that the argument was he was too high, but the flip side was at Fulham it was the high press and playing right against their back line which undid them. So I don't know what the answer is, but my perception was he had the most ineffective first half I've seen him have, and that might be a combination of playing against a great left back. It might be a combination of the inadequacies of others. It might be a combination of him just being off, and whatever else, or playing too high, too deep, or whatever. But it was, he is our talisman at the moment, and we need him to be on song. And the first half he was very much subdued.
I think just not to get to Sean McGinley analysis on it, but I think it was a combination of all those things. That left back was brilliant, and I think
their press was good all game, and with 10.
They were a different team to Fulham. They weren't looking to play quick technical breaks out from the back in a footballing way. They were more direct than Fulham. They're very well organised, a bit more like Huddersfield than anybody. Very well organised, very aggressive, knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't technically that amazing. Fulham were picking it up and looking to play. And then we were getting in their faces because they were looking to play, whereas they weren't interested. Their fullback was just like, okay, fine, you come, get tight to me as possible. And then we didn't really have anything to press, if that makes sense, because they weren't faffing about at the back. And I think that was part of the problem in that sense, is if you're gonna get success pressing, there's got to be something to press, but there wasn't really much to press, if that makes sense. I don't think it was a failure of our press more than QPR were like, well, we will just not get pressed then, if that makes sense. That's how I read it anyway.
Yeah, I think, Tim, we were just overrunning midfield for the vast majority of the first half, and The red
And
card was a godsend, really, because I don't think he'd have changed it because he can be quite stubborn at times.
Yeah, I think that the defect in that system is that, and this is where I think the James bit to a degree comes in, because I think I've got to say I think Jordan can play quite well in this system, but I don't think James. I think James was the weak cog generally, because effectively those two fullbacks really have to be in midfield to make up the four in midfield, and they've got to stretch the play and make sure that you take some of their midfielders out to try and combat it, but it just wasn't happening. I felt sort of James was playing more like a traditional left back spot in a back five, which doesn't really work. And yeah, it is if you are going to play two midfield and you're playing against a good championship midfield, you are at risk of being overrun. So I sort of like the system, but it's got I think everybody's got to be on the ball for it.
I didn't like the system at all, Tim. I just did not like it from
well, I don't like the way we played it, but I actually like the system as an away system. But I actually, to be fair, and I hadn't really thought about it the way that Mitch has just described it, but it's probably right. When you've got a team who will just pump the ball down the line or not keep trying to play it across the back to keep possession, then the advantage of the press is diminished significantly, isn't it?
I think it's the system that we don't have the players for. That's the problem. If you're going to have essentially a midfield two, they've got to be really good, and Dougal and Connolly are good players, or they're not atrocious, but then they're not going to control the game. Those two against three players in midfield, who are at least their technical equals, and possibly they're better technically than them. It's not going to work. And Lavery hasn't got the presence on his own to be the central fulcrum when you haven't got anybody feeding him with quality football, with quality passes. That's also not going to work. And without doing the whole Medine thing again that I do, and it's become almost like a comic Medine meme with me. But the reason Medine is valuable is because you don't have to feed him in a precise way. You can push it generally in the area of Medine and he'll make something work, but Lavery won't. So I don't think it's a systemic thing that system is a bad system, but it's a system we do not have the players to play successfully, I think, if that's the way I read it now. But that's hindsight. I thought beforehand, yeah, something different, time for a change. I'm not going to slate Critch too much because, Alex Ferguson put teams out for United and they'd get drubbed and it would be a weird system. And then, that would happen. All managers may put the wrong system out sometimes. So I don't think we should, run him into the ground for it too much.
As Amax says there, Tim, we were better playing with a back four and Sterling at left back. Absolutely. I thought Sterling wasn't nearly as effective today. Not having James lightweight and gets forward, stops, turns and plays it back every time. Do you think if we'd have just started with a 4-4-2 or tried and trusted formation, the game would have been completely different?
I think it's it's another case of with the benefit of hindsight to a degree, where we worry about the opposition more than worrying about us. So we've gone to try and contain QPR, haven't we? And contain. I didn't realize contain.
Is that a new word you just invented?
I won't care. I'm on John's alcohol-free BrewDog grapefruit IPA, so I can't even blame the booze on a school night.
Yes, I've just spent some of the Patreon money giving all the lads a crate of BrewDog, but mixed in with alcohol-free, which Tim is now sampling. Mitch, you've had to give your case yet, so that's in the post.
Excellent. You didn't mention it was alcohol-free grapefruit juice.
I didn't forget to mention that.
So, what have I done now? 35 pods or something. I've got an alcohol-free grapefruit juice. This career is going well.
You're in for a treat.
Ooh,
once you've hit 50 pods, then you get the alcoholic version.
Excellent.
Anyway, we digress. Let's move on to the second.
Eyedropper to drop it in.
The
answer to your question, would it have been better at 4-4-2? I think is a very clear yes. But the problem is we play this sort of basic 4-4-2, and we are going to have to find some more nuance somewhere, somehow, if we're going to sort of progress as a championship side. So whilst I'm not saying Critch is Ferguson, I still don't blame him for not setting up in 4-4-2, but I think we clearly would have been, yes. I think we'd also be fed up if we just continued to be, as we progress in the championship, a team that tries to hit Gary Medine, and that's it. We have to try and be better than that. We have to try and have other options than that.
You're starting to sound like Sean now. This is
No,
worrying me.
I'm not. I'm saying that we have, we have to play in different ways.
Don't start talking about XG.
I'm not going XG. I promise I'm not going XG.
Fine.
But what we've discovered, John, is that at the moment we are still very right. And Sean is still very wrong.
Do you know, our most effective passages of play this evening were those beautiful diagonals from Casey. They didn't like it up on those right backs, didn't they? It reminded me of Evo in the Premier. Casey, apart from when the commentators were bigging him up as how well he'd played, and he did have a good game. The commentators were saying, he's had a great game, very solid today, Casey, not put a foot wrong. And he literally just passed it out for a throw in on our 18-yard box at the edge of it. I remember that was quite funny.
But he did play well. Oh, sorry, I thought Tim
he did, yeah. I loved his diagonals.
He did play well.
Yeah, loved his diagonals.
He looked a real footballer as a defender. I wasn't entirely sure as a defender that he was spot on. He lost some. There was one corner where it might have even been there. I can't remember. There was one point where he lost somebody quite badly in the area. But other than that, I didn't see any issue with defending. But I thought as a footballer, he looked really good. He looked really calm in possession. He was good going forward, and I was impressed with him. And it does beg the question: is why has he been kind of locked in an underground room and not allowed out? If that's how he plays, that looked decent to me.
I think we've got to bear in mind, and obviously there's criticism in the chat, and no doubt on the forums there'll be criticism, but we are sort of hamstrung by the personnel we have, haven't we? And I think with the benefit of looking back at where we were on the 31st of January, I think the decision not to invest in additional personnel in midfield is one that's causing us some of these problems as regards what systems we can play now. Because whether we play Stewart, Dougal, or Connolly, they are essentially the same player. They are defensive midfielders, all three of them. Probably Stewart's got the most quality, but he's also got glass ankles. So, I don't sort of blame Critch for saying I'm not going to play more than once a week, because if I do, the risk is he's going to end up back on the treatment table and we're not going to see him again this year. So we are, whether Brannigan was the answer or whether somebody else was the answer, the reality is that with Carey out and with Keshi out, we are very, very light in the most important area of the pitch.
I think Keshi was missed terribly this evening.
Massively,
I think he would have made a big difference. We were quite poor on the left, weren't we? CJ was poor, Reece James was poor. Just Keshi floating there would have made a huge difference, I think. Okay, on to the second half then. Tim, no surprise really to see Reece James hooked, given he was on a yellow and there was potential for a red. There were little digs at him, and the goal machine was brought onto the fray, and we switched to a 4-4-2, and Blackpool were a different side almost in that second half, and we played on the front foot.
Well, I don't know possession isn't everything, as we well know, but possession-wise, I don't know what the stats.
Oh, they had more. They had more. They had 52, 12, 48.
I mean, I struggle with that. I struggle with the concept that they had 52% possession in the second half. I mean, we seem just...
That's throughout the game, Tim. That's throughout the game.
Right, okay. And that's probably right, because they probably had 65, 70% possession in the first half. But I think we're very much reversed in the second, as you might expect when you're playing against 10 men. But sometimes I've seen Blackpool play against 10 men and not dominate possession. So the reality is we did, but the problem came when we got into the final third, and the lack of invention and the predictability of what we were seeking to do. Probably to a degree, Bowler accepted. But the problem is when you and this, for me, Bowler's at his most effective when he's got a little bit of space to go at. And when you're playing against a 10-man, they sit back behind the ball, and that creates additional problems for somebody of bowler's ability to actually get through. So in some respects, whilst we saw more of the ball and he saw more of the ball, his ability to be effective with it diminishes because he's got 2 or 3 players sitting behind the ball who he's going to get through before he can do anything. And I think CJ really struggled with that at the beginning of the second half as well. He just didn't have any space to go into at all.
CJ's always going to struggle against a pack defence, isn't he? He's always going to struggle against a defence that are determined not to determined to stay deep, and they were deep, and he hasn't got a trick, and he's going to just sort of run into their defender all day, because that the way he plays is to try and run past players or get in a foot race with players and run beyond. But if they're going to play so deep, there is no foot race. CJ's got no chance. I thought he didn't play very well, but I actually thought I'd give him credit for keeping going. He was there. He had an energy to him, but his execution was poor. And I think I'd credit him with that energy for showing up and trying to do it, even when it wasn't working. I think I'm probably feel guilty to slate him in the past, but I think that's a fair way of looking at it.
So Tim, he was hooked on 66 minutes, CJ, for throwing Dale. Like for like sub, do you think Dale made much of a difference? Too many. He's a bit of a step over merchant for me. All style, no substance.
I think the jury's out. I don't think we improved with his introduction. But equally, I can see why Critch thought we need to do something different. So, maybe he thought he had the ability to unlock the defence. I mean, Kirk played in the last game, set up the first goal, but then sort of faded very much. So it wasn't an illogical substitution by any stretch of imagination. I think the only other thing we could arguably have looked at was whether we introduced a third midfielder and brought Stewart on and played 3 in midfield. But that you'd have probably then, I don't know whether you'd have taken somebody off at the back or whether you could have rejigged it with Bowler and how do you do it then? You might have done Bowler.
Could have taken Conley off. Really, I think Stewart.
Yeah, then you'd have been leaving the 2 again, still, wouldn't you? I was just thinking whether you could have rejigged it to play the 3. I think really, unless you were going to take one off at the back, then you were going to have to go 2 in front, weren't you? With Medine, Bowler, and whoever, Yates or Lavery. So it could have worked, but I think part of the problem was we were. With a Slovene 4 at the back, we had loads and loads and loads and loads of possession in around our halfway line. But when we get to the last third, that's when it starts to get slightly unpicked.
Ponderous possession in our own half, does not score goals. Callum Connolly had a chance, Mitch, to score a couple of goals. One was a great header that was going winding back a bit, leapt a bit like Medine. It was a very good chance. Possibly should have done better a bit too near the keeper, who made a meal of it.
Yeah, no, I thought he did okay. I thought he did okay with that one, and he had a pretty poor shot that he lashed over the top. But I was with the general consensus on Connolly, and I think the consensus on Connolly kind of shifted that actually we like Connolly now. I think and I'd still think today. He kind of showed forward impetus. He had a go. He got in the box. He got on the end of some crosses. He was trying to make things happen. I noticed in the last few minutes of the game, he was trying to drive us forward. He was chasing the ball back, but winning it, waving people forward. And he's not the answer in midfield, but I think he deserves some credit for trying to be the answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And even in that second half, if the best chances and the assist come from Callum Connolly, that's maybe showing you that we are not exactly a creative powerhouse, you know. And on Dale, just before, I had a very uncharitable thought about Dale, and I'm going to say it, and I don't normally like saying things, but Dale reminds me of a crap Kai. because he comes on and looks like Kai in the sense that he doesn't really seem to sometimes do anything, but he prances around whilst doing it. Whereas Sully, at least when he's having a quiet game, had the dignity to just be quiet and not show off about it. And that's probably the most uncharitable thing I've ever said about a player on a podcast. But that's where my head was at with Dale tonight.
You just can't let it go, can you? But joking aside, I take your point. Joking aside, I take your point. Kai had end product. Dale doesn't.
He did, yeah. Unless he's playing Reading for 20 minutes.
He's dining out off that, isn't he? That Reading performance.
Yeah.
He won Sean over. Won our accredited journalist friend over. Where was he tonight anyway? He's probably at the match, won't he? Tim, Jerry Yates came on for Shane Lavery, 74 minutes. Final roll of the dice from Jerry.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was on for the first 5 minutes because I nipped to. I was having one of those Kolsch's, which is it's best to keep it cold, so I kept half the drink in the fridge, and I went to top my drink up, and Jerry came on, and he said it took me 5 minutes to realise he was actually on, which is probably indicative of his contribution. To be fair, I think he was. We speak about effective play, and I'll be honest, I didn't see much sign of that from Jerry, unfortunately. I love him as a player. I want him to do well. I want him to score goals, and I want him to unlock defences. But I don't. Again, we go back to Mitch's comment when the chances are being created by a midfield player who's playing out of position, and I'm trying to think what I know he didn't have long, but I didn't see much, which is a bit disappointing, really.
Oh, for Cameron Brannigan, eh? I think he may have been the conduit to give us a promotion push, but just generally to the room, I think playoffs is now off the cards, isn't it? A slight glimmer we had has now been extinguished.
Yeah, definitely.
I think. Yeah.
For me, it went with the last home defeat. I was, we were 1-0 up, and I was like, "Oh, playoffs!" And then 1-1, maybe not 2-1. Nah. And I only believed for about half an hour. It was nice for that half an hour, but then it was about that half an hour. We're never going to do it. Mid-team with Callum bloody Connolly as central midfielder is not going up to the Premier League. It's not.
But we did get on level terms, Tim, on 82 minutes, courtesy of the main man, Josh Bowler. Thankfully, not on a balance sheet somewhere, still playing football. Now, the goal itself, I think he played to do what he did, because on the comms, they were kind of saying it was lucky, but...
He was scuffing or something to the table.
It was, yeah. You're taught to hit the ball into the ground.
Interestingly, if Connolly had headed that ball into the ground, it'd almost certainly have gone in, wouldn't it? When he had his header. Not criticising for it, but interestingly, there was a good raking ball from the back. Was it Thornley who
Thornley?
Yeah, I think it was Thornley put the ball in, and Conley did a great knockdown for Bowler on the edge of the box, and as you've just said, he sort of half volleyed it into the ground, completely wrong-footed. The keeper bounced up over him and into the top of the net. So. I think most of us were, if not literally, figuratively dancing around the room at that point. So, and maybe thinking we could go on and win the game. And I think our despondency and our view of the way we played may have been slightly more tangerine tinted. It had a couple of the chances that then came our way, found the back of the net. So, but yeah, at 1-1, you felt that there was only one team really in it, one team going to win it. And we thought we'd set it well for the last with injury time, last 10 minutes or so.
We thought we'd set it up for an It's Medine moment, Mitch. Big Gaz just failing to get under that great cross from Gabriel.
It's up there with the Gaza miss in Euro 96 for me now. I don't want to talk about it. No, look, yeah, maybe Gary should have scored.
From our viewpoint, watching it on the TV, did he get onto it? Was it a bad miss? Or
I
did
didn't
he
have
just
it
not
down
get?
as, oh God, that's a terrible miss. It just seemed to be one he was stretching to and didn't quite reach. I mean, he did make contact with it and it came off him. I didn't feel like it was a howler of a miss. It was probably one he should have done better with. But I mean, Medin's not a clinical striker. And the point, I think the other point is, and I feel like this about the way we see this team overall, is we say, I don't know, Lavery's got to score more, Yates has got to score more, Medin's got to score more, but, and I keep banging on about this, we don't make enough chances. Gary Medin is not a clinical striker that's going to score one goal in one chance. No, you know, Yates is probably our best finisher, but he's not going to score one, he's not going to have one chance, score one goal. Lavery's certainly not going to have one chance, score one goal. And how many chances did all the strikers have between them tonight? Well, I think Medin had a shot. And I think Dean stretched onto one at the far post, and that was all we created for the strikers. So, yeah, probably taking in isolation, maybe you can make a case that Medin should have done better with that. But then we still come back to the fact that that's just about the only chance we've created for a striker on the pitch. And that's not good enough. We're not going to win enough games like that. Well, not that's not good enough, but that's the root of why we are not going to be a playoff chasing side ultimately.
Yeah, not creating enough side teams. Yeah. Tim, weirdly, I thought QPR were the better side after we scored. Did you feel the same?
I think he almost gave them the shot in the arm, didn't it? When all of a sudden they just seemed to have an extra yard in them and seemed to close us down better. They pressed at the back on our defence far more and looked like, you know, obviously they were disappointed having conceded the goal. And I actually thought it'd have the opposite reaction. I thought they would go and just try and defend for the point, but it seemed to bring them out the trenches and ultimately, as we saw, produce a successful outcome for them. So, but I've got to hold my hand up and accept complete responsibility for the defeat based on my posting on the podcast patrons group as to the performance of a certain centre back. I gave him the kiss of death.
I don't think it's actually been accredited an own goal. I'm just looking on FOTMob and it says Amos 89. So I mean I couldn't see from the TV
I was listening. I was watching the I can't remember what it was. It was a Tangerine TV stream, and whoever was doing it said it had been credited to Thornley, but I must admit we haven't, because we jumped straight on. I've not had a chance to go back and check BBC or anything like that.
I'm just trying to have a check now. No, it's down on who scored as well as Luke Amos. George Thomas assist, Luke Amos goal, 2-1.
It looked like it looked like an OG to me, but I said I've not had a chance to watch it back. So,
but OG or not aside, a very soft goal to concede. Casey, perhaps.
Yeah, I noticed in the chat actually. I'd said I can't really remember him making much defensive mistake, and then just after I'd said that, a couple of people went, "Yeah, he needs to get tighter on letting that cross." And I was like, "Yeah, obviously he did. It was just so coming on so quickly, you don't really have time to process what happened." And I think, yeah, he sort of stood off. Oh, you've crossed it. You know, he didn't really force him wide or make a tackle or force him to the touchline. He just kind of went, "Go on," and shadowed him from a distance.
How many last-minute sickening equalisers have we had this season?
There wasn't a league table, and we were already, even before that one, we were runaway leaders. We were doing we were the Fulham of the last-minute goals, I think, conceded, thrown away. Winning or drawing positions in the last 5 or 10 minutes, I think the stat was, and I think it was something like 19 points dropped, if I remember rightly. So
Jesus.
We were really good at winning games late last year, if you remember. We won loads of games with last-minute winners where it looked like, you know, or they've been equalised and been snatching in the last second. This year's just the opposite. It's gutting.
And it reminds a little bit of the Premier League year, doesn't it? Where we were performing well and we couldn't quite hang on, and it's a little bit of it's a bit of a skill gap, isn't it? At the end of the day, you can perform to a certain level for most of the game, but the little bits of individual brilliance or individual skill that create a goal out of nothing, like Bournemouth did with Dembele. It's just that extra money that people spend on players, that extra bit of class, does make that a little bit of difference. You know, you can huff and you can puff 100%. And you can match them. You can be tactically astute. You can score some good goals, but over a 46 game season, the better players are going to score more goals than the players who aren't quite at that level. And that's really what we're up against. And that's what we're up against in the Premier League.
To extend that very briefly, it's also sometimes the quality of the subs they bring on that adds to that, and the quality of the subs we bring on that doesn't, if that makes sense. And that was also very Premier League season where we would go right up against somebody and sometimes not like the best team, and then they bring somebody off the bench. I mean, the United game's a classic one, but it happened
Giggs,
a few times.
Berbatov off the bench.
And Giggs.
I've never seen a player change a game like Giggs played there without even knowing about much, you know. And you sometimes just had to go, wow, at what other teams had on the bench compared to what we had on the bench. And I think there's a bit of that this season as well, where we're bringing on Owen Dale and they're bringing on somebody who's actually really good, you know. And again, I'm slagging off Dale. I'll probably feel very different about him next week. So sorry, Owen Dale. But if I slag him off, he'll come good.
Well, that's always what happens. Right, let's move on to the player ratings. And then we'll say good evening. We'll fire through these. Dan Grimshaw, Tim.
I thought he pulled off a superb save in the second half, which was, I think, was their only chance before the goal. Not sure he could have done a huge amount about the first one. There was a suggestion he could have come for it, but not too good still there. I think it's an 8. Decent enough.
Yeah. Jordan Gabriel, Mitch, got to be up there for man of the match for me. I thought he was superb.
Yeah, I thought he played well. I'll go 8+.
Dujon, Sterling, Tim, not as effective in this back five.
No, and you know, and yeah, I thought I'm not going to. He didn't play badly. 7.
Yeah, just solid, wasn't he? Oliver Casey on his debut, Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, I'd said he was great and then forgot that he probably cost us the gold. So I'm gonna go for a 7. I thought he looked really good as a footballer. I was very impressed with his calmness. A couple of times he took the ball down, sort of went inside his man. He looked very assured with the ball at his feet. Delivery was excellent. But
give him a 7+ for the diagonals. Go on.
I'll have a 7+ for the diagonals and we'll move on.
Jordan Thornley, Tim.
Yeah, I actually thought he had a great game. I know and I don't. Perhaps I was being a bit harsh with the OG. I think him and
he's got to have an assist as well. He's got to have an assist as well, hasn't he?
Well, it was the touch before, but it was a great ball. To be fair, I think I've got to go. I'm going to have to go 8+ for Jordan. I thought he had a superb game.
Brilliant. Ever since we snatched him back from Oxford. Reece James, Mitch.
6. No, 5+. 5+ because the sending off was well earned, but he was poor.
Yeah, it's not good enough at this level. I think
he looked poor on the ball as well. He looked out muscled quite a lot of the time, and he looked poor on the ball, and he looked lost actually going forward sometimes. I thought that was a poor performance.
Kenny Dougal, Tim. Kenny was getting back to his best in this game. All action. He was a captain as well, wasn't he? I think you've actually mentioned that.
I think he does actually make a good captain. Yeah,
that slipped pass.
I didn't think it was that was a great pass. To be fair, I don't think it was one of his best games. But you know, whilst we're critical about the fact we haven't got the attacking midfielder, you can't. You know,
he does his job, doesn't he?
His job is to be a defensive midfield player and pick the ball up, do the water carrying bit that Deschamps and used to do so well back in the day, and that's his role. And I thought he performed it reasonably well tonight against what at the end of the day is a playoff hunting championship side. You know, they're no mugs. So I would say probably an 8.
Callum Connolly. It's a bit of a Marmite performance.
Yeah, look, the reasons why Callum Connolly is not the answer were there, but also the reasons why we shouldn't necessarily rule out Callum Connolly as a member of a possible midfield were also there. The more I watch him, the more I kind of think of the whole, all the way through Keith Southern's career, you would go, oh, Keith Southern's possibly a player that we maybe possibly could get a better player than, but actually then eventually we all realised how great Keith Southern was, if that made sense. He was never aesthetic. He was never, and it was, Southern was made by the players around him and him fitting perfectly into that job. And I do sometimes think that Connolly has actually got some real qualities, but the problem is that he's not got anybody alongside him. And Dougal and Connolly are a bit like if you had, I don't know, Southern and Jorgensen in midfield, and that's never going to get you to the Premier League. But then when it becomes Southern, Vaughan, and Adam, then Southern suddenly is this perfectly shaped cog in a fantastic midfield, and we all appreciate and love him. And I think Connolly could almost have those kind of qualities, but without Vaughan and Adam, no, he's never going to get us to the Premier League. So I think that's a very long-winded way of saying I'm going to give him a 7+. No, I'm going to give him an 8. I'm going to give him a 7+. And I want to highlight a comment, MK's comment, where he says we need a ball carrying midfielder. Perfect. That is perfect. Nobody could carry the ball tonight. That's perfect. We should have just said that. Had that comment come on the pod. We lost 2-1. We need a ball carrying midfielder. Good night.
Where's that monologue banner I've got? Someone. Josh Bowler, Tim.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think everyone's been a bit harsh on him in the first half. I just think he's come up against a very good.
Yeah, and he probably has. And in the second half, he saw plenty of the ball. He's scored a goal. He takes.
He's our main source for goals at the moment as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably the top scorer now. He can't be far off. It's not exactly anybody to really. No, exactly. So he looks like he's scoring goals, which he didn't used to do, and he's effective. Probably just didn't get quite behind the defence in the way that he did in other games. But apart from that, I think he did well. He's got to be up there with the best who are out there tonight. So I'd say another 8+.
5 goals he's got for the season. Gary Medina 6, Jerry Yates and Lavery have 7 apiece. So something we need to look at next season. CJ Hamilton, Mitch, a bit out of his depth this evening.
Yeah, he did. What did I give? Got to give James 5+. So I'll give CJ 6. Didn't
That's
really
fair.
do a lot.
Shane Lavery, Tim, I think a few people were clamouring for his re-inclusion in the side. Did he do much to justify that?
Short answer, probably not enough for me. I thought he was. Listen, I think he worked hard. I think he put himself about a bit. He closed down, but it was all rather ineffective. We're not quite seen the Shane yet who was lighting the field up before he got injured, are we? Where he just doesn't seem to have quite found that pace, quite found that. He was like that annoying player nobody ever wanted to play against, wasn't he, at the start of the season?
Also, I got Keshi putting those little balls in the corner and around the corner, and that's what he thrives on.
Yeah. So and Steve's made the same point. So I don't want to be too harsh on him, but he obviously got to, if he plays well, I'll be the first one to say it. I just don't think he had a lot. He might have been feeding off scraps. 7. I nearly said 6, but I think I'll go 7.
Steve's taking you from the brink of a 6 to 7. Right, Timothy, just before we go this evening, we have a birthday request coming all the way from the Gold Coast of Australia, don't we? Yeah,
Dan, and I think there's a little bit of a link to the pod as well as being a watcher. But Dan Pickavance, who watches us from the Antipodeans. Antipodes?
Ooh, good. There we go. Isn't that South Africa, though?
No, that's Australia.
Okay.
That
I shouldn't question you on the Timson, should I?
Yeah, so his girlfriend reached out for us, said it's his birthday. I'm forgetting now which one it was. Is it
Was it
30th?
30th? I
30th.
think
I
it's
thought it was the
30th.
30th. I wasn't. It said 40th, and I was about to. It's a bit of a grainy picture. So we just wanted to say, Dan, we understand watch all the pods. Massive Blackpool fan. Obviously, I presume you've emigrated. Have a great birthday, and I'm sure your girlfriend's going to treat you, and I'll raise my glass of my non-alcoholic beer and say cheers. Enjoy your birthday.
Happy birthday, Dan. It feels like we're like a TV show, a proper TV show now, and we're getting birthday requests, aren't we?
Yeah.
So only for big birthdays lists, not for like
Yeah.
37th and thing like that. If it's a big one, we'll start doing it.
And also, it must be difficult when you're on the other side of the world. You know, if you want to watch your football and you know, your opportunities to come to games obviously will be limited. So it's great that we're hopefully able to keep him connected with the football back here. And I believe he watches literally. He's an avid watcher of every show. So
I thought Tim was very smooth doing that dedication. I really did. I felt like he was just going to lean over and play, and we were going to have, I don't know, Lionel Richie come on afterwards or something. It was very, very good, Tim. Yeah, outstanding.
It's like he has to public speak in his day job or something, isn't it?
Yeah, who would have think I could do that?
As Steve has rightly pointed out, we've not done man of the match. Good job you've posted that, Steve, because I did actually forget man of the match. As there's only three of us, I'll do one this evening. I'll kick it off with Jordan Gabriel. I thought he was a magnificent player, both defensively and attacking, and we're always on the front foot with Jordan, so I thought he was fantastic, and it's good to see him back in the team. I don't want to see him dropped again, so Jordan Gabriel for me. Over to you, Mitch.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's Gabriel or Thornley for me, and I'll go Gabriel.
Ditto, but I'm going to say Thornley. I just think Thornley, he's coming from the cold, and I think he's been brilliant since he's come back in. So I'm going to give it to him. But equally, I will be extremely disappointed if Gabriel doesn't play on Saturday, because this dropping of him it blows my mind as to why he doesn't play every single week.
It is very, very, very strange, given the fact he's only 21, right? As Tim said, we've got a game coming up on Saturday against Reading, and it's the governor is back. He's been out of football for 8 long years. His last job was actually at Blackpool, but you can't keep a good man down, can you?
You couldn't write the scripts either, could you?
Paul Ince is back in the room. He was there at the match this evening, apparently at QPR, and he's doing exactly what he did at Blackpool. Firefighting, and he's managing his son. And right, you can make this up.
And he's brought Alex Rain as well. It's like the team, the deadly duo are together again.
He's getting the band back together, is he?
Yeah. He's got Rain. He's just got Rain as his assistant.
This is just a quick shout out to anyone out there who remembers the Paul Ince masks, and if you do still have one in the cupboard, it's a right laugh if you bring it back to the game.
If you do still have one, why have you kept it for 8 years? That would be my question. And if so, fair play.
There you go. Steve's got one. Steve, can you explain why you've still got it?
Steve, do you throw anything out in your house? Do you still have everything that you've ever had?
I think I had one for about 5 years, and I only chucked it away when I was having a bit of a clear out. So I guess a lot of people have them in there, but it's going to be hilarious if everyone wears them. And
I can understand I've got me an Enco shirt still because it's my first shirt. I don't have every single shirt I've ever had. I've got some old programs under my bed, and I've got this, but I have to be honest, the Paul Ince mask is not something I would treasure forever in my treasured possessions box.
Do you remember that game when he was on the touchline looking very studious with his piece of paper in his hand, and it leaned down and somebody zoomed in on it and he just said shoot.
Well, think of what he's learnt in his 8 years off. He might have pass written on it as well.
He always reminded me, and I think I've said this before or drawn the same analogy, but when he was manager, I always felt he was like that guy off Jimmy Grimble, who all he ever said. If you've ever seen the film, and I'm sure some people on the pod will have done, because you're both looking at me blankly, that there's only one Jimmy Grimble. It's called. It's a great film, and there's a guy on it, and I've forgotten his name now, but he's a really good character actor, and his son played up front. And all he ever would say was, pass it to Gordon, pass it to Gordon. And that was his... And that, you can imagine Paul into the dugout just going, pass it to Tom, pass it to Tom. And, you know, if somebody could ever ruin the kid's career, it was him, and the way that he approached that, you know, playing his son, and he did him no favours whatsoever.
Tell you what, though, it's added a bit of spice to...
It has, isn't it? Yeah.
What would be a... kind of a drab season curtain ender. Blackpool v Reading doesn't really get the pulses racing, but the inclusion of Tom and Paul Ince, particularly on the bench, certainly does. So the chaps will hopefully be previewing the show with the Reading pod tomorrow, I think. So I think we'll call it a day there, gentlemen. So thanks ever so much, everybody, for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure for you to see you on air, given the fact it was such a heart-wrenching defeat yet again.
And just to have a good trip home, guys, as well, the ones who've made the effort, because you were loud and proud.
Ooh, and a fly's just landed on my screen. It's gone now. Right, yeah. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for commenting. All as we said is thanks for downloading, and up the pool.
Up the pool.
Pool.
Change